Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads for our second predictions video for the Acolyte. This will be about the Acolyte episode 4, which is the final one that a lot of press have seen. We have not seen it yet. We're looking forward to talking about everything we think might happen in the fourth episode, as this one is going to be, again, probably controversial, but it's going to set us up into the second half of the show, and it is going to do so with the shortest episode of the entire series. We've done the math for y'all. You can double check us if you want, but we've done it. And this episode should clock in around about 26 and a half minutes based on that original leak for the run times of the first 4 episodes. What you want to do there is you want to subtract about 4 minutes for the end credits, and then you want to also subtract about a minute to a minute and a half for recap and logos at the beginning, and then you get your runtime. So we got about 28 minutes if you subtract that 4 minutes and then another minute and a half. That leaves you about 26 minutes, 26 and a half minute episode. So that means this episode's going to be streamlined. What's it going to be about? We are going to talk about that right now. Make sure you hit that like button if you haven't. Subscribe to the channel for more. We will be doing these predictions every single week as we lead up to the new episodes of the Acolyte. So if you want to see our predictions for episodes 5 through 8, make sure you join us every week if you're just finding us for the first time. And if you are just finding us for the first time, join us every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. We'll be talking about the latest episodes of The Acolyte the day they come out. Most likely, we'll be starting right around 7 because these episodes are so short. But if they somehow start to get longer, that show, of course, will be delayed a little bit later. But make sure you join us every Tuesday for those latest streams. We'll take all of your questions, your theories, and everything about the Acolyte that you want to talk about live. All right, so Sanak, let's get into this episode. I did my preamble about the show length and this episode length and how we're going to probably not have time to do, 10 different perspectives in this episode. It's probably going to be streamlined into something. What do you think episode 4 is going to be about?
Yeah, I think with the nature of it being very streamlined, and this doesn't even include the dubbed credits at the very end, right? So anyone saying, oh, there's an extra 3 minutes, no, we accounted for that too. So including all that, I really do think that this emphasis on that tag that we have there on in the second episode on Kofar with Kelnacca, we're going to be in a present day storyline, and it's going to be on Kofar. I would not be shocked. A reason why this is a shorter episode is because we're going to get a lot of the perspective of Kelnacca, or part of his story be told here. We know he's a reclusive loner. He's staying away from anybody else. He's staying away from the Jedi. He's not wearing his Jedi robes like we saw in the flashback in this last episode. In essence, like, he's not hiding that he's a Force user, but he's got no part with the Jedi. He doesn't even seemingly want to tell people he's Jedi. He just happens to have these abilities. So I think this episode will focus on him. He feels like the key here. We've seen in the promotional TV spots and some parts of the trailers, he's going to be using the Force, wielding a lightsaber in the flashbacks. And if there is, in this situation between a mostly humanoid witch clan and human Jedi, if anyone's going to stick out like a sore thumb, it's going to be this guy. And Wookiees are always going to be big, loud, strong, and you're adding in the Force here, right? So I think he's going to be almost pushed and pulled by the Jedi, by the witches with their possession abilities. And we're not going to see what exactly goes wrong, but we're going to see why he's so reluctant to confront anything in the galaxy. So I wouldn't be surprised if part of this episode is just really about him scavenging, living on Kofar, just sustaining himself in a way. And with this being such a short runtime, I think the only other perspective that we'd get is maybe Master Soul and Osha and everyone else having a few moments to like collect themselves after why they let Mae go, and like what was going on there, like what things need to be discussed further. But the priority of then following up on the last remaining candidate with Kelnacca, and the need to really regroup, like Vernestra Rwoh said, I think we're going to see Vernestra like forcibly call in the situation, or maybe even show up here and force this little discussion between this council of members that she's going to bring up. So I think those are like the only two ways it'll be split up. We'll see things with Kelnacca. It's not going to be very vocal based, right? It's going to be more of how his actions, how his body language kind of portrays who he's become, why he's acting in such a way. Then we're going to see the gathering of forces, right? The preparations to go save, go protect him, get a little bit of an understanding from the people who can actually talk in English and talk in basic about why Kelnacca hasn't had any contact with them, why maybe he hasn't like returned any of these hollow calls or any warnings from the council that that's been aware of all these murders going on, that are connected in relationship to the events that happened place on Brendok. So we're going to see a little bit of that from Vernestra Rwoh's side and just everybody put together here. I think we're going to see potentially a little bit more focus on like the adult Jedi kind of taking lead. I wouldn't be surprised if a Yord and Jecki are kind of told like stay back. Now the situation's gone a little too big for you right now. They might disagree and kind of bring themselves into the mission anyways. I think that's kind of partly their dynamic at this point, that they're both very headstrong and they're going to do their own thing or be advocated for by Soul. But we are going to see a lot of these so far unnamed Jedi that seemingly will be in the jungle of Kofar and meet this possible dark sider. But I don't think that happens just yet. I think that's more in like the 5th episode. It's just that they're going to all be ready, jumping onto the Jedi ship, going to Kofar, have some backstory about what's going on with Kelnacca. And Kelnacca is just going to be doing his thing in this episode, and we're just going to have to witness him.
Well, I really hope he doesn't die in this episode, because I do think it's a Kelnacca-centric episode. And I think a lot of what happens in episode 4 will tell us about the structure of this show moving forward. How do they want to handle flashback? We've now done flashback in an entire length episode. Do we do flashback now starting in sequences? Do we do Book of Boba Fett style, like half flashback, half present day? Do we just have moments where characters remember things that happened to them in the past? I don't know what this show is going to do, because it's been pretty inconsistent with its structure so far. That could be part of the reason and the mystery of what they're trying to do here, but it really just feels like it's all scattershot right now with the way this show has played out. And so I can't really pinpoint how they're going to pace out the rest of these flashbacks, because we know we're going to get at least 2 more perspectives. We're going to see Mae's perspective, and we're going to see the Jedi's perspective. At some point, we're going to get those perspectives of what happened on Brendok. That is happening. But I think Kelnacca, with the connection he's established with Osha in this, if he did die, it would now have a bit more emotional weight, because we know that, hey, we don't know what the extent of their relationship was, and they might reveal it a bit more through more heavy-handed exposition in this episode about, hey, I remember when Master Kelnacca used to take me on piggyback rides through the Jedi Temple, something like that. Like, we're going to have those moments. They could do it well too, but we're going to have those things that like get us attached to Kelnacca. And I think with this type of runtime, unless he like dies and it's at the very end, and it's kind of this like twist and it's a sad moment and they get there and it's too late, I don't know if we're going to have time to fully do his death. But the other thing I could see happening if we don't, for some reason, go back to Kofar, which again, Kofar seems the most obvious, especially with that strange tag. We talked a lot about the strange tags in our review, but the strange tag at the end of episode 1 and episode 2, having that Kelnacca tag just for him to not have the episode be about him in the next in episode 3 was really weird. So it seems like we should go back to him. But if we don't, I think there's enough time in this episode to maybe give Mae's perspective or the Jedi's perspective of the flashback. If we wanted to go to the flashback, we could do one or the other. Like if we could do the Jedi, how they got to Brendok, why they're on Brendok, we could do that as an episode and then build up towards the eventual reveal of what went down between them and the witches and Mae towards the end of the show. But I think that's all we really have time for. I would really like to see that. There's still so many questions I have about these Jedi. I know we're supposed to have these questions, but there's a lot of things that don't make sense about them in the lore of Star Wars, about why they're there for the kids, what's their obsession with these girls, and I think a little bit of explanation about what they're doing on Brendok would be something that I would personally really enjoy for this show. It would give it an extra added weight and some extra importance to its place in Star Wars for these particular Jedi, as we continue to try to get the audience interested and invested in these characters. I think that would help out that set of Jedi. It obviously wouldn't help out our main characters, though, who are Osha and Mae. And I think because, now we went back in time and learned more about them as kids, the next logical step for those two characters would be to press on with their story. We haven't really seen what Osha is like dealing with the fact that she's seen her sister for the first time in years, and the fact that she's alive and she thought she was dead. That moment, I think, should be heavy for both of them. We shouldn't glance over that. And there should be moments, whether it's in this episode or in the next one, that really say, hey, this is why my sister's so important to me, whether it's in a good or bad way. And I think that should be something that we see in this episode as well. So there are a lot of directions we can go. And I think ultimately it is just this episode is going to push us in a direction, right? We heard before from press that episode 3 was the controversial one, but this is the one that kind of is going to have that tease for the second half of the season. I imagine something significant happens here, whether it's Kelnacca's death or a big reveal, or I don't necessarily think it's out of the question that the Darksiders in this episode and we get to like actually learn a bit about him. I think there's going to be some type of reveal here at the end of this episode that really pushes why we should watch the second half of the show, why the press were ultimately fairly positive about this show when they saw all 4 episodes at the same time. There's a lot of things that should at least make you hooked into the narrative after episode 4. And I think despite the short runtime, I'm very intrigued what that's going to be. But let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think might happen in the 4th episode of The Acolyte? What do you think is going to be the trajectory of this show moving forward? Let us know all that in the comments. If you haven't liked the video, it helps us out so much. Share it with other fans of The Acolyte as well. We'd love to have everybody on board with this show for the rest of its runtime as we do our predictions and we talk about and review this show every single week. Make sure you subscribe if you are new. We have plenty of other great content to look forward to in the future on Star Wars Lads. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we will see you all next time.